What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Rentish Podcast. I'm Zach, here with my co-host, Patrick.
Forgot we had the new intros. We're two hosts on a mission to learn real estate investing. On this podcast, we'll share what we're discovering about property management, wild stories, and the lessons we pick up along the way.
And that's the fun part. We're learning as we go, just like you. We bring in experts to guide us and break down the tricky stuff and figure it out together. So let's laugh, learn, and dive into real estate side by side. Yeah, that's right, producers. I added the side by side. It's not in the script, but I like that anyway. I always kind of like that because it felt like a Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood sort of vibe. Like, it's a beautiful day in this real estate podcast. You know what I'm talking about. All right.
Yeah, I did.
Follow the show at The Rentish Pod. Email questions at therentishpod.com. Follow us on podcast platforms around the world. You can go to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, pretty much anywhere that you get your shows. You can download The Rentish Pod and give us a like, give us a thumbs up or a review. Tell your friends that are into real estate and property management that they might enjoy this little show called The Rentish. But Patrick, ordinarily, I'd ask you how your day is going. I don't care today.
Yeah.
I really don't, because we've got a special guest and we've got to really jump in to ask them some questions. So I'm going to dive right into it.
My day's good. I'm gonna offer that information. My day's going well. But anyway, I know I wasn't asked, but all right, continue.
I told you not to go off script or else we're canceling the show. Today, we're joined by Bailey Kramer. Bailey is a real estate investor who focuses specifically on midterm rentals and currently owns and operates 10 units with no partners or outside investors. His portfolio generates roughly $25,000 per month, and he documents his real-world experience to help others understand what midterm rentals actually look like in practice. Bailey, welcome to the Rentish Show.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here. I can already tell it's going to be fun.
Yeah, right. So fun is a great way to describe it. We're glad that you're getting that vibe. A lot of people tend to tuck the tail between their legs and they're like, oh no, this is going to be bad. I'm going to have to listen to these two chuckleheads talk for a while. But how's your day going? I actually care about your day. I'm going to ask you.
Thank you so much. My day is going super well.
Good.
Yeah, no complaints so far.
Awesome. Well, obviously, it goes without saying, thank you for being on the show. We'll get into it a little bit later of where you can find out more about Bailey, so stay tuned for the rest of the interview. We're going to talk with him for a little bit about his journey, and that's kind of where I want to start. I want to hear about you. Obviously, I gave you a little summary in the description, but like, tell us about you, your journey into real estate, like where you are, how you got here, what makes you tick.
For sure. Do you want me to start from the beginning or kind of where I'm at now?
Choose your own adventure, man. Wherever you want to go, we'd love to hear it.
All right, cool. Well, I guess I'll start because it wasn't that long ago when I first started, about 6-ish years ago. And I was basically in college and I was essentially looking up online, like best businesses to start, best investments, stuff like that. One search led to another. I found Rich Dad Poor Dad, learned about real estate through there. And I looked up I kind of liked what I was hearing from Robert Kiyosaki in that book. So I looked up how much is Robert Kiyosaki worth? And it was like a lot of money, either hundreds of millions or maybe even $1 billion. And I was like, how did he make his money? And then I saw real estate. I'm like, okay, this is great. So then I type in the internet, how to get started in real estate. One thing led to another, found bigger pockets, and listened to just a bunch of podcasts to learn more. Ended up, the short story, of course, met some guy basically through bigger pockets that had some experience. I was in college and I had no experience, no money or anything. And this guy pretty much took me under his wing and said to me, you do the cold calling, I'll handle the rest, and we'll kind of partner up from there. So that is essentially what happened when I think I was a junior in college at this point. I would basically cold call homeowners who either had a lot of equity in their houses or certain criteria.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, I say, hey, do you want to sell your house? And after a lot of those calls, I had one guy who said, yes, I actually need to sell. And I said, great, let me talk to my partner. So I basically transferred him over to this guy and he did all the closing for me, essentially. That ended up being the first deal, which was a fix and flip deal. And again, I had no knowledge, no experience. I didn't even know what was even happening throughout the deal. But since I found the deal, I kind of was the 50-50 partner on it. And that was my start in real estate. Obviously, a lot has changed in the 6 years, but I'll pause there if there's anything else for the very start of the journey.
Wow, yeah, that's a different and earlier start than I feel like a lot of our guests have had. So that's definitely a cool perspective. I guess one of my questions is, your resume is centered on midterm rentals, and a lot of the resources that you provide is very specific to midterm rentals. So what about midterm rentals made you interested in that market? Or like maybe it just like happened that way. I'm not sure. Like what was your journey with midterms
For
specifically?
sure. So basically, to fast forward super quickly, with that first guy I bought the properties with, we did fix and flips, we did long-term rentals. Then we bought a property, like we didn't know the strategy, but it was an Airbnb. So then I started doing Airbnbs. And out of all the things I did up to that point, I was like, cool, Airbnb is phenomenal. Then I started basically managing other people's Airbnbs. That was super cool too. And then how the midterm rental thing came about is someone connected me with somebody on Instagram. It was a complete random connection and said, hey, I have this investor based in California. He has long-term rentals in Indiana and he's interested in joining the Airbnb hype, basically.
Hmm.
Can you help him with it? And I was like, I mean, I've been doing it in Illinois, so I don't really see why I can't do it in Indiana. Like, I think it would work just as well there. So he basically said, Bailey, here's one long-term rental. The tenant just moved out. Furnish it for me and turn it into an Airbnb. And again, I was really heavy into short-term rental at the time. And I think it was a complete accident that we got a booking inquiry for like a 3-month stay on Airbnb for this property that was like double or triple the amount he was getting as a long-term rental. And we got that book and I was like, that's pretty sweet. Let's just kind of shoot for more of these long-term, longer stay bookings. I didn't really even know what the midterm rental term even meant. But from there, he's like, all right, here's a second long-term rental. Tenant just moved out. Now, instead of turn this one into an Airbnb, turn this one into a midterm rental. Then he
Right.
gave me a third property, turn this one into a midterm rental. And I was like, okay, this is really sweet. And then at this point, I was basically managing a bunch of people's Airbnbs, some turning them into midterm rentals. And at that point, this was in 2022, roughly. Don't quote me, it might be off by a year. But at this point, I was like, okay, the midterm rental thing's working for that I'm operating for other people. I am now ready to start buying my own properties, no partners, just myself.
Yeah.
And that kind of gave all that experience gave me the confidence to just start doing it.
Okay. Is there, this might be a silly question. Is there no silly questions on the podcast? Of course. I
No silly
forgot. I already broke my own rule. Is there an Airbnb for midterm rentals? You mentioned that you just kind of connected with some of these people and then obviously moved that conversation elsewhere, but it's like that starting point, like it seemed to be Airbnb for you. And then you moved into the world of midterm rentals, but it's like, is there a hub for that?
Yeah, good question. So there's a couple sites that are more specific for midterm rentals. So one of them is called Furnished Finder. It's pretty much primarily, if you see like the advertisements for it, they kind of target it towards travel nurses. So basically, if a hospital is understaffed, they'll need to hire nurses or doctors from other cities. Those doctors need a place to stay during their contract. So Furnished Finder is popular for that. There's a site called the Blue Ground. I was actually just tweaking some listings on there right before this, but that's another site where, again, people are looking for 1, 2, or 3 month stays. So those are kind of the two primary, like midterm rental specific platforms. But I would also say a lot of people are still booking midterm stays through Airbnb. So it's kind of cool. You can do, you know, for some of my properties, we'll have like a lake house, for example, that I run for somebody. So in the summertime, we run that thing as a short-term rental for like almost $1,000 a night. But then during the winter time, no one's coming to this town for a short-term rental. So then we'll just change the settings on Airbnb essentially to target longer stays, if that makes
Hmm.
sense.
Okay.
So, okay, so I
Interesting.
guess I have a question. Wait, because you're aiming for the midterm range. Like, what is too long? If you're like advertising something, I know you mentioned like 3 months, but like let's say it's 3 months, and then somebody's like, "Well, I actually want to stay for 9 months." You're like, are you like, no, like get out, like you leave after 3 months? Like, what's the idea behind the length?
That's actually a really good question because oftentimes when people want to stay for longer, they kind of want a little bit of a price discount. So to answer the question, I want someone in there for as long as humanly possible. As long as they're willing to pay like the rate that I want, which
Mhm.
is typically 2 to 3 times long-term rental rates. So if they're willing to pay that, I want them in there forever. If they'd sign a permanent lease, I'd be in.
Yeah.
Um, I would say the shortest stay that I would take as a midterm is probably like 30 days. Obviously, that could change if I've got like 5 vacant properties, and if someone wants to stay for a week, by all means, I'll take the money. But for the most part, I would say I haven't really ran into that too much where I have a bunch of vacant properties. Normally, they stay pretty solidly booked. So yeah, anywhere from 30 days, 60 days is very common. I just got a couple 6-month stays recently. That was pretty sweet. I did take a slight discount in the rent, but it gives me 6 months of pretty much guaranteed rent, so I feel pretty good about that. But and I've had I'd say the longest stay that I've had was about a year and a half through a midterm stay, and that was actually a construction worker who just his company happened to be near the town. They needed a place to stay while doing a big job, and yeah,
That's fascinating because I think midterm rental, the first thing I did think about was like vacation stuff, like people wanting to go. Like you gave the description, like people come into a place that's really not ideal time to be there, but maybe you just want to get away from it. But then you think about like people that are essential workers or people that need to move for jobs. Like that makes a lot of sense, actually.
for sure.
That's
And
cool.
one other thing to throw on top of that for like the lake house as an example,
Hmm.
we'll have people who inquire typically on Airbnb for this one where they'll say, "Hey, it's winter time. We're going to be doing renovations to our house. It's going to take a month or two. While we're doing those renovations,
All right.
can we stay at your property?" So there's infinite cases, but that's just another one that
Okay.
rings a bell.
Well, it
It,
sounds like you discovered this world. It kind of clicked for you, and it worked out the gate. I mean, I'm sure we'll ask about like the trials and tribulations of midterm rentals, but I mean, I want to know who are midterm rentals not a good fit for. Now, obviously, they're a good fit for you, but it's not for every landlord or property manager out there.
for sure, definitely not for everybody. I would say the people who it's not for. So I'll explain who it's not for, and then the people who like nod their head yes would be like, okay, definitely not going to do this, and the people whatever. So oftentimes midterm rentals get last minute bookings
Mm,
because again, sometimes I mean a lot of the time the travel nurses, the construction jobs, the families relocate. A lot of the stuff is last minute. So if I have my calendar completely empty and I have zero bookings in the future, and like this is what I often tell owners who want me to basically run their property for them. I say, if I have your property and it's completely empty in the future, no bookings, no revenue on the books coming in, and I tell you I want you to wait 2 to 3 weeks
mhm.
before you start freaking out, and they're like, "No, I need to see something. I need to make sure that we have some booking like today." Then I'm like, "Listen, this isn't for you." Because especially when you're first starting out and you have like, if you start the booking today, you're going to have no bookings, and it may take 2 to 3 weeks to get your first renter in there. So, for people who want to see absolute, guaranteed stuff on the books in the future, like you would with a long-term rental. Like if you have a 12-month lease with somebody, you can kind of feel relaxed for the most part for the next 12 months. Or even for a short-term rental, like a traditional Airbnb, you'll have like a weekend stay in 2 weeks from now, maybe another weekend stay 4 weeks from now. And for some people, that makes them feel better. But for midterm stays, I'm not taking a short weekend stay a month in advance. So it's either I have a solid midterm rental renter in place or it's completely empty. And for some people, they get super nervous about that because they're like, "Oh my God, what if it never gets booked?" And if that's then I would say don't do midterm rentals. But if you're okay with a little bit of uncertainty for hitting a jackpot of a 3 or 6 month booking, then I would say, great, then it is for you.
Sure. Do you think it's a wise place for some people? Like we talk to a lot of landlords that encourage people to house hack and then get into the real estate world, maybe buy a couple properties, like start out small, right? Like probably jumping into midterm rentals right away might be like a bit of a like not like you might be a little overzealous kind of jumping right into that world so quickly, but like having other guaranteed income is probably a good place to be as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think house hacking is a phenomenal strategy, and like if someone's gonna do that, by all means, I think that's great. If they do it in like a duplex or triplex, where they're gonna live in one unit, rent out the others, then midterm rentals, you could do that in one of the units or whatever. But also too, the reason why I explained it the way I did is because I don't want to make it sound like you're just gonna get booked 12 months of the year, everything's gonna be rainbows and sunshines and whatever. But the reality is if you run a midterm rental, even if you're vacant for the first month, which to me has never happened. Like usually while I'm setting up a unit, before the furniture is even finished, I'll take pictures on my phone, I'll list it, and the last couple properties I've done, I've gotten it booked before I've even finished the property. But it's just the idea that, you got to be uncomfortable with a little bit of, you know, vacancy, if you will. And then also too, if you once you do hit that jackpot of a 3 to 6 month booking, which could happen the day you get it listed, it could also happen within a month you get it listed. The money you're gonna make from that, if you run the numbers correctly and you get you price it correctly, you're gonna be making significantly more money than a long-term rental. So I wouldn't say beginners like rookie real estate investors shouldn't do midterm rentals. I wouldn't say that because at the end of the day, for me personally, I would rather have like 6 months booked at double long-term rental rates versus 12 months booked at half the price, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
for
does
sure.
make sense. So with all midterm rentals, then I'm assuming you have to furnish everything, or do you just provide bare bones furnishing? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, so it's basically furnished for like I say fully furnished. And what that means is you have to think about if a family or somebody's going to move in there and live there as if it was their house for 6 months, which is quite a bit of time. So we're furnishing everything. We're talking beds, nightstands. Like you walk in and you're like, this is a house I can live in.
Like
You know,
silverware, plates, all that stuff too?
silverware, plates, coffee machine. We're supplying the toilet paper.
Okay.
It's almost like we're supplying the same things as like I guess a hotel would in a way. Like we're supplying the towels, except since it's a house, we have a kitchen, and then we have pots and pans. We have like literally all of those things.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So basically a midterm is sort of like an Airbnb. It's just trying to book those people out as long as possible at Airbnb prices, sort of. Is that kind of the strategy?
Exactly. The one difference though, because when people think about Airbnbs or furnishing Airbnbs, a lot of the times they're like hot tubs, murals on the wall, cool amenities. That's
Mhm.
not what we're doing with midterm rentals. We're providing all the basics that a traditional vacation rental, I guess, would
Yeah.
offer. The only difference is we don't have those fancy amenities, and they're
Yeah.
really not needed for midterm rentals, which is good because it helps us save cost on the front end of like getting the unit ready. And then also too, like you mentioned, we're trying to charge pretty close to short-term rental prices. So if when all works out, it's really good because we're saving money on the front end and charging very similar prices.
Right. Right. I gotcha. Um,
Well, Patrick
Zach,
mentioned the stuff on the inside. I'm curious about the property itself, right? You mentioned that you have a few of these, you manage them. If you, Bailey, were about to go out and acquire your next property, like what kind of property would you be looking for? What works best for these kind of midterm rentals and like if do you avoid specific kinds of properties? Like I'm curious about all that.
For sure. I have properties that are like I have a wide range, I would say. I have properties that are 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom. I have 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom. I have 1 bed, 1 bath units. So I've pretty much have like a variety and a wide mix. So it's hard to say like just focus on this one property. What I would say is the different property sizes are going to attract different people. So for example, 1 bed, 1 bath. That's going to be like very specific people like travel nurses, for example, or a single construction person would rent that place. So that's like my 1 bed, 1 bath units, perfect for those people. My bigger properties, 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, those are great for families. Those are great for construction crews if it's like a group of people staying at one time. Sometimes higher paid traveling doctors will stay at my bigger properties as well. So if I had to give you like one answer right now, I would say 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms is going to give you the most variety of people who are
Okay.
willing to stay there. Although every almost every single size property is going to work. it's just going to attract different people.
Sure. Well, if all these different places like attract different kinds of people, is there one that you're like, I'm not touching that with a 10-foot pole then?
Not really, to
Not
be
really? Wow.
honest, just because I think having a little bit of diversity like isn't bad with units. So like I have like my one bath options. I have my 3-bedroom options. So I think it's nice to have a variety. Um, I would say, yeah.
Quick question. So, what about like location? Because I'm wondering, is like a more urban, like close to the downtown of a city environment, is that good for midterms? Is more like suburbia more attractive for people looking for midterm rentals? Like, is that something that you think about?
Yeah. So my properties personally are in like secondary or tertiary markets. And what that means is they're not in like your name brand cities. So for example, like I don't like to give the specific locations of my cities personally, but just as an example, if we're talking about like I'm currently in Denver, Colorado. So if I'm talking about Denver, like that's like not everybody. Most people have heard of Denver, Colorado, right?
I want to meet the person that doesn't know what Denver
Right,
is.
exactly, yeah.
And I'd invite them on the show, but email questions at the Rentage Pod if you don't know what
Yes.
Denver is.
If you don't know where Denver is, we got other issues. Exactly. But like so that's like a primary market because yeah, that's a market that you'd expect everyone to know.
If you have
Now-
a pro sports team, basically, that's not a market you're interested in.
Right.
That's funny.
Okay.
Correct. If I like to be in markets where the people like using Denver as an example, if there's a market or city like an hour away from Denver that most people in Denver have heard of, but people who don't live in Denver haven't really heard of, those are the markets that I'm more interested in. So these are markets that are like an hour away from the bigger city that people in other towns or other states like probably don't know of.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. So like somewhere where like a working individual like might want to live. It's not like, for example, like maybe like a shorter term rental, like a bigger city like New York, for example, or something that might be attractive for that. But somebody who's like a traveling nurse might be living in more of a suburb sort of
Right.
setting. Is that kind of the idea?
Yeah. Basically, it's not going to be a destination, like a vacation destination
Right.
market.
Yeah.
Like
I
people
gotcha.
come to Denver for work, for fun, for a lot of things, but an hour outside of Denver, not including like the ski towns, obviously, but like just some random town an hour away, people aren't just going to those random towns like for fun. It's usually like work or, you know, the hospital system, like traveling nurses for hospital stuff like that.
Yeah. That makes perfect sense.
Midterm rental in the middle of Rocky Mountain National Park that's like a snowy cabin. It's like, are you perfect environment for a travel nurse? Yeah, just bring them on up. You gotta cross country ski to get to the nearest hospital.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And also too, it's not to say that like Denver, just using that as an example still, Denver will work as a midterm rental. It's just that when you have a market that is also a vacation market, it becomes a lot harder because there's so many more options in that city. So like Denver, if you look on like Airbnb, which is just the easiest site to go to, and you look up, properties available for Denver in the next 2 months. Like if someone wanted to stay for 2 months starting today, there's going to be a lot of options because some of those options are going to be short-term rental hosts who just literally have an empty calendar, but their properties are still going to pop up in the search because they're empty and their dates happen to be available for a midterm stay. There's going to also be other hosts in Denver who strictly list their properties for 30-night minimums, but they're still going to be thrown in with the mix of the short-term stays, which just makes it a little bit tougher. But if, again, the city's an hour outside, there's not many people doing, honestly, either short-term rental or midterm rental. So usually less competition on those markets that are outside the city.
Cool. I do want to ask about the tenants, the kind of tenants that you guys get for midterm rentals. We talk a lot with a lot of our guests that come on the pod about important steps to like make sure that I mean, you're entering into a lease agreement with these people just like a long-term tenant would be, and a lot of things that our guests tend to stress is the importance of like tenant screening. I want to know like what are the subtleties and the differences of like, do you even go through a tenant screening process for a midterm rental? Like, how do you go about doing that?
That's a really good question. And I would say my opinion on this has shifted over time. So what I'll tell you where I'm at now, which is if someone's booking through Airbnb, which it ranges month to month, honestly, it could be 25% to 50% of my bookings will come through Airbnb. I do not require leases, background checks, or anything through Airbnb. I actually was just talking to someone yesterday who was struggling to get their midterm rentals booked. And I looked at their Airbnb listing, and I'm not saying this is the only reason, there were some other factors too, but on the bottom of their listing, they had as like other things to note. You must provide me your ID, employment contract, you need to do a background check. There's a utility cap. And I'm like, I would never book a property like that, especially on Airbnb, because for the most part, at least Airbnbs I booked, you're not looking for like the host who has a million rules. Obviously, there's certain rules which like obviously make sense, but then there's other rules where it's like, I'm just trying to stay here for 3 months. I'm not looking to have utility caps and this and this. The whole
Yeah.
reason why you book through Airbnb is for the ease of booking. So when people book through Airbnb, I don't do anything, like no requirements. When people book with me off platform, whether they find me on Furnish Finder, whether they find me through other means, I will sometimes do a background check.
Okay.
So one of the audiences that I don't do a background check on, which maybe I should, so I'm not necessarily recommending you don't, but I don't personally, are the traveling nurses, because I can pretty much tell how much money they're getting paid. I can tell, if they are a doctor or a nurse, maybe I have a too good of a preconceived notion about them. And I have run into trouble with that once, by the way, with the traveling nurse. But for the most part, they're people who are going to be paying their rent on time. You already know they're employed. So for the most part, I am not doing checks on those types of people.
Yeah.
Not to say you shouldn't, but that's just me.
Well, it makes sense.
it.
I'm sure there's people that approach it in many different ways. I figure it's one of those things you got to figure out what works best for you. It just depends on how, what kind of a person you are, I guess, like how you want to manage it. So that makes sense.
For sure. And also too, I'm also like for my traveling nurses, for example, I'm doing my own checks on them online. I'm doing like reverse searches on their phone number, looking at their primary. Like I can look up their information and get and have a feeling, are they legit or does it seem fishy? If it's fishy for whatever reason, then sure, I can throw a background check at them.
Yeah, makes
Right.
sense.
So like the idea there is you don't want to have like a high risk situation, but you also don't want to have like a super high like barrier of entry. Like you want people to like find your booking easy to get into, like not a hassle. That's kind of the idea with midterm rentals.
Exactly. And also one other thing to throw on top of that is I'm also 9 times out of 10 calling them. Actually, I'd say almost every time. But yeah, calling them over the phone and having a conversation. So if someone reaches out through Furnish Finder, I'll call them up and I'll be like, hey, just saw your inquiry come through. And just like have a conversation with them, like what brings you to the area, and just get a feel for them, talk to them, build some rapport. And to me, that goes farther than just like, hey, here's a background check. And yeah.
And when you call them sometimes, do you ever get you're like, that sounds like a chat. That sounds like an AI voice.
People that I call?
Yeah.
No, so far so good. So far so good.
So the AI hasn't gotten that far to trick us with the over the phone screenings yet.
I would not be surprised if that's coming.
Sure.
Yeah, same.
I want to ask you a couple. I know we're getting close to the end of the time here that we get with you today, Bailey, but I did want to ask about scaling your business. Obviously, you've decided to grow without having partners. You've done this whole thing like solo. I'm curious about like why you chose to do that. Do you prefer to do that? I mean, I know that we get a lot of people on this pod that talk about having a group of people or like team members that they work with. But I'm curious to hear about your experience as a unique individual.
For sure. So when I kind of mentioned in the beginning how I was in college when I started, I had no money, no experience, and I partnered with somebody for the first 6 properties that I bought, which I no longer own. So the properties, the 10 units I currently own, all me, and I don't have any partners. I sold the properties I did. I It's a very long story, which won't share the full thing, but I had a very bad experience with that first partnership. The first few deals, the first 6 deals were great until you start learning things you didn't quite know about how they operate, their morals, their values, that kind of thing. And so since then I sold, and I was pretty much like, I don't know, because of that bad experience, I said, you know what? I'm just going to buy properties by myself. Now, I will say, even though I had a bad experience with that first partnership, I still learned so much on the real estate side. And I don't know if I would have been ready. I don't know. I don't mean hindsight, you never know. I don't know how I would have bought a property completely by myself without having any prior experience. That would have been daunting. So I'm very happy I got the experience I did
Mhm.
partnering with people. So I don't necessarily recommend people don't have take on partners because again, I don't know if I'd be here without the experience. But um, because I had a bad experience, I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna go solo at this. I don't want any partners. And I've been extremely firm on that because I have had people offer me, hey, I've got some capital. I'd love to do a partner, do a deal with you. No, thank you. Not worth it. At least right now. I might change my mind in the future. But yeah, I just don't want that headache right now.
Okay.
Yeah, it makes
That's cool.
sense.
I mean, you got to do what works best for you, and there's a million different landlords out there with a million different protocols and procedures and how they like to go about things. So it just makes sense. It's just interesting to hear your perspective because most people we talk to are like team oriented. So
Yeah,
it's cool to hear that someone's had success just being on their own.
for sure. Yeah, and I think honestly, like if that first partnership went super well, maybe I would also be team oriented. Like maybe that would have changed my perspective for the better. And I also know like of course there's good people to partner with out there. It's just yeah,
Yeah.
not for me right now.
Got it. Well, before we get out of here, I did want to ask you. I mean, there's plenty of resources out there. You mentioned Bigger Pockets. You mentioned some of the ways that got you into property management, but you also manage a YouTube channel and you give out advice and talk about details about your strategies and your structures and all that to people out there. So, give the people a chance to figure out like where to find you, what resources you would recommend. Anything you want to share?
For sure. So on the YouTube front, like you mentioned, I have a playlist on my YouTube channel, and you can just look up Bailey Kramer, and I should pop up. And I have a playlist with I want to say over 130 videos, specifically about midterm rentals. It's basically a free course on YouTube, essentially, that can if someone's just starting out, just trying to understand the different, what midterm rental is all about. And then also I get into very specific stuff on there too. And I even have a call recording with a lead on Furnish Finder that I mentioned, which is kind
Cool.
of cool. You can listen to that. So that's a great place to start for people who are interested in videos. I have an Instagram as well. You can look up my name, Bailey Kramer, should pop up as well. And I share kind of shorter clips and shorter tidbits on there. But yeah, those are probably the best 2 places to start.
Okay, right on. Yeah, I'm sure that if you check the episode description, our lovely producers will put that information there as well so that people can go out and find you. Did you have a resource that isn't you that you would recommend? Something that you're like, is it big? I mean, we have so many people recommend Bigger Pockets all the time where they're like, use it. It's a great resource, especially if you're just getting in. Is there anything you'd like to shout out there?
Yeah, I mean, I think for just general, like, real estate, just, like, trying to understand all the different because there's so many different routes you can go, midterm, short term, long term, Section 8, you name it. I think Bigger Pockets does a good job of just kind of overall sharing bits about it. And then once somebody kind of figures out what rental strategy they want to get to, then I think going more specific, like diving deeper into specific resources. And same thing with like this podcast, since you guys interview so many different types of investors, like maybe they'll hear someone say Section 8 and that'll click with them. And then they'll kind of go down the Section 8 rabbit hole, or maybe midterm rentals clicks with somebody and then going down that rabbit hole. So yeah.
Cool. Okay. Well, Bailey, I think your wealth of knowledge and your insight stunned my co-host Patrick so much that his Wi-Fi decided to just jump right out of its socket. So It's been a pleasure talking with you. We really appreciate you having you on the show, and I'm sure I speak for all of us that said we'd love to have you back sometime to hang out and chat with us.
For sure. Thank you so much, Zach, and thank you so much, Patrick.
Yeah, thanks again. Remember, fans out there, follow the show, whatever podcast service that you use. You can go to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your shows, search for the Rentish Podcast, and you can find us. Give us a like, give us a review, give us a rating. Email questions@therentishpod.com with your real estate and property management questions. If you have any questions for Bailey, feel free to shoot us an email, and I'm sure Mousse will do his job and get it to him at some point. Or I don't know if that's even Mousse's job, but I'm sure he'll do something there or the other. But thank you guys for listening again to the episode. It's been a really fun one. Until next time, I've been Zach. That's been Patrick. His Wi-Fi came right
I'm
on
back. Yeah, I don't know.
You
what
have
I
anything
missed,
left
but,
to say before I end the show, buddy?
Sorry,
You missed
everybody.
everything.
Yeah.
It was great. It was glorious.
I'm a disappointment, and I apologize.
No, it's okay. You did good, buddy. All right. Well, thank you all for listening, and we'll see you next time.